How's it going, YouTube? We're bringing you guys another Digimon card game rulings video today. Now, before I hop into the video, I want to say thank you guys for all the continued support on these videos. I hope that going forward, you continue to subscribe to the channel because we are going to be having more of these videos in the future, especially for coming formats. I hope you guys continue to hit that like button on the video and leave your comments down below. Any of your small questions, I have no problem answering. If they're really complex questions or something like that, I'll either try to answer them in the comments or worst case scenario, we put them into a future video and we can get it there so I can go into a little bit more proper resolution. But with all that being said, I do want to thank you guys and everybody again on the Judge server for helping me out with these videos and helping me finally get the opportunity to take the official Digimon card game judge test, which in fact we did pass. So now we are an official Digimon card game judge. I hope that I will be able to help you guys out even more so as I continue to follow my learn the rulings for new cards, current cards, better understanding of effect resolution and stuff like that. So with all that being said, again, thank you very much. Since we're an official Digimon judge now, I could not have done it without you guys. It is very important to me and hopefully will help make the content even better going forward. Speaking of the content, let's go ahead and talk about what today's videos are going to be on. It's not necessarily going to be over specific colors like the first one or two videos I did, or specific cards even in general. This one is going to be more so over specific interactions, how certain trigger effects activate in certain orders, how certain effect resolution properly activates, and a few things like once per turn effects and mandatory once per turn effects, how that also affects it. I'm not going to go over Omnimon on some mandatory once per turn effects. You can't make me do it. If you really want to know, I guess I can go over it in the comments down below or something like that, maybe in a future video. But all that, I digress. Let's go ahead and hop into the first ruling so we can see what I'm talking about here in this rambly explanation. Alright everyone, so into our first ruling that we have here, this is going to be the board state. This is going to be player A and this is going to be player B. That's going to how I'm going to try to differentiate the two different sides instead of me and my opponent. So player A is going to have an Omnimon. Omnimon's effect, for those of you that don't know, this is BT5 Omnimon, has when Digivolving Blitz and then when Digivolving Unsuspend. And then also has the Alterns effect. It's an interruptive effect of when an opponent's effect would delete this Digimon or return it to the hand or deck, you can stop that effect or stop it from being deleted or return to those respective areas by returning a level 6 source underneath it. Underneath him as his level 6 source is a card that not everybody may be familiar with, but this is going to be BT3 Durandamon. The only thing that we're worried about here with Durandamon is it's inheritable of Piercing. Our opponents, or again, player B is going to have Rebellimon. Now, in this situation, Rebellimon will have its when Digivolving effect active. It is currently player A's turn, and player B will have the Retaliation and blocker for the Rebellimon. So, into the example, we're going to have Omnimon from player A's side swinging into security at player B. Player B will then choose to block with Rebellimon because it has blocker and Retaliation. Now, and then battle will happen. There's no other when attacking effects, so we'll go straight to the battle. Battle will occur. The Rebellimon will be deleted, being 7k, and the Omnimon being 14k. Now, on the deletion of the Rebellimon and the winning of the battle of the Omnimon, at the same time, two effects will trigger. We'll trigger the Piercing, just like any other activated effect, such as Retaliation or any other effects that have to activate via a condition. Piercing has a condition, and it has to trigger and activate. It's not just if you have Piercing, you win a battle swinging. It's not how it works. It triggers and it activates. At the same time, Retaliation onto Rebellimon will also trigger. And then, so we have two pending activations that have occurred at the same time, but player turn order gets priority. So in this situation, we've triggered Piercing via the battle. Now Piercing will activate. Now, most of the time that may seem like that this is where the check will happen, but in actuality, Piercing is more or less the permission of the game to give you security checks after the battle and all effects have occurred. So now, at the activation of Piercing, Omnimon has been given permission to check security, assuming that he lives this battle. Now that we've activated Piercing, we go to the only other pending activation, that is going to be Rebellimon's Retaliation. Rebellimon's Retaliation will attempt to delete the Omnimon, and then in the attempt to delete the Omnimon, the all turns effect of Omnimon will trigger, and then they will activate it by trashing the Durandamon underneath as its source, and then of course the Rebellimon is already gone. The Rebellimon's been deleted at this point. Retaliation resolves in the trash, just let that be known, but I left it on board as an example to kind of show that its effect was still needed to be activated. So now in this situation, you just have an Omnimon, the battle has finished, there's no other pending activations. most people would think since the Durandamon is no longer in the sources that the Omnimon can no longer check any security. That is not the case. Since Durandamon was in the sources and had the effect of piercing trigger, activate, and then resolve successfully, even though it has left the sources, Omnimon is still under the effect of piercing. So even though it has trashed the source to protect itself from Rebellionmon's retaliation, Omnimon will still then be able to check a security afterwards because it is still live, and then piercing had successfully resolved, even though it's no longer in the source. In a similar situation, I kind of wanted to go over a situation that goes over two different things. This main first example was to go over how piercing effectively works as a triggered, activated, and resolving effect. It's not just some permission the game gives you automatically. You have to trigger it, activate it to get the permission. But at the same time, I also want to go over in a situation where, let's say you have two instances of retaliation. What we're going to be using here is BT2 Devimon that has retaliation and inheritable retaliation. It'll be underneath player B's Rebellionmon that also has its retaliation and blocker via Rebellionmon's effect. Now, what a lot of people also may not think of is, since there are two instances of retaliation, there will be two triggers for retaliation. So in this situation, again, player A will swing security, player B will opt to block with their Rebellionmon. In this time, just like last time, piercing triggers, retaliation from Rebellionmon triggers, but also the retaliation from the Devimon's inheritable would trigger. You have two triggers of retaliation. So Omnimon, again, just like last time, will trigger and resolve its piercing first as turn player. Player A is currently the turn player. And then now we leave it up to player B. They have two instances of retaliation that have both triggered, and then they can choose to resolve them in any order. So let's say that Rebellionmon's effect trigger or retaliation activates. We're going to try to delete the Omnimon. Omnimon's interruptive effect will then interrupt, and then we'll trash the Durandamon underneath, saving it from being deleted. But since there are two instances of retaliation and not just one single instance of retaliation, and even though they have retaliation from two different effects, that, like I said earlier, that is two different effects. It's two separate activations. So in this situation, now retaliation will activate from Devimon as the second trigger, or as the second activation, targeting the Omnimon, deleting the Omnimon. In that situation, since there are two instances of retaliation, they do both trigger and activate separately. It's not just like once you have retaliation, you only have it one time. You have it from each source. So you have it from the Devimon, and then you also have it from the Rebellionmon. So this is kind of one that goes over multiple instances of retaliation and how piercing works. I thought it was very important because there is piercing in the meta currently, and there will still be piercing in the future, I am sure, via more effects to come out. So it's important to know for the future. So everyone, on to our next ruling, or processes, rulings, I should say. This is our board state. This is going to be an important card that I'll go over here in a second. This is going to be player A. The only thing player A has on their field is a Zort defeat. The only effect we're worried about here is on deletion, delete one of your opponent's Digimon. It is currently player A's turn. Player B, on the other hand, will have a Dynasmon on field. What we're worried about here is player B's all turns effect of Dynasmon, which it says when you are at 3 or less security, or after a card has been removed from the security stack, if you are at 3 or less security, recover 1. This is going to be our 4th security. You can see right here, player B has 3 security. This is going to be the 4th security, Wyvern's Breath. On main, give neg 15 to one of your opponent's Digimon, and then on security, activate this card's main effect. So this is going to be the board state for security, Dynasmon on player B's side, player A's turn with a Zort defeat. So what's going to happen here is we're going to swing security with Zort defeat. Zort defeat will in fact check security, and then of course we will reveal the Wyvern's Breath that we showed previously. So it's at this point that you need to know exactly how these effects trigger and how these effects activate. So the security effect of Wyvern's Breath, as soon as it's checked out of security, will activate. This is what happens, and at the same time, we'll have the effect of Dynasmon's all turns effect, since a card was removed from the security stack, and we are only at 3 security now. It will trigger. So it hasn't activated yet, but it triggers at the same time that the security effects activate. So here we'll resolve the security effect of Wyvern's Breath, targeting Zort defeat. Now, at this point, we'll have something called rules processing happen. Now, in rules processing, it's basically the game trying to see, is there a level 2 Digimon on field or a Digimon with 0 DP on the field? If there's a level 2 Digimon, it will send it to the trash. If there is a Digimon with 0 DP, the game will delete the Digimon. So in this situation, we'll resolve Wyvern's Breath, giving neg 15 to the Omnimon. Omnimon will then go through rules processing. It's at 0 DP. It will then be deleted. So it gets deleted. This now triggers his on deletion effect. So on the screen, I'm going to try to have somewhere where you have the first pending activation is going to be the Dynasmon. But then the second pending activation now, thanks to rules processing and thanks to the timing of when security options happen, will be Omnimon Zord Defeat. Zord Defeat will then have its effect need to be activated before Dynasmon's. So Zord Defeat will target Dynasmon as the Digimon to delete, deleting Dynasmon. Now we'll go back to the chart or the list, and the next pending activation is going to be Dynasmon. But Dynasmon's no longer on the field where it needs to be to activate its effect. It is in the trash, it has been deleted, so now it will not be able to successfully activate since it is no longer on the field. This specific example is good for rules processing. I did want to go over how that would work, how it would delete a Digimon and mention that. There's going to be another example later on where I do want to go over this, but this also really is just to show you security effect timing. In say if it was a similar situation and instead of this being a Wyvern's Breath on the field, it was say a Gaia Force. Gaia Force would come out of security, it would target the Zord Defeat first, deleting it. This would then trigger Zord Defeat's on deletion effect before the Dynasmon would be able to activate, deleting the Dynasmon before it is able to activate. So this is really just a good example to go over that. Now, at the same time, I do want to go over something really quick. Let's say in a situation happens and instead of being a instead of being a Wyvern's Breath in security, it is in fact a Susanomon, basically anything that's 13k or bigger. So here in this situation, you'll swing security with the Zord Defeat. You'll then check the security and revealing the Susanomon. Before battle happens, again, at the security check, this is when Dynasmon will trigger. All of these effects will then activate. All the triggered effects from the removal of security, say something like a Kari as well, a BT4 Kari, will then trigger and then activate before the battle occurs. So in this situation, Dynasmon will activate. Since it is the only pending activation, you'll recover one, battle will happen. Now these two Digimon will crash, or will battle. Zord Defeat is then smaller than the Susanomon, target the Dynasmon and delete it. You will still get the recovery because the triggered effect of Dynasmon will activate before the battle actually occurs, and then you will be able to get the recovery off of Dynasmon before Omnimon Zord Defeat is able to delete it from the security battle. So just an important thing because Dynasmon I don't think is going to go anywhere. It's important in current meta if you're still playing some BT7 meta, but I think Dynasmon will show up, rear its ugly head in a few situations, and then of course more option effects and some more alternative effects like that will occur, and it's important to know the proper way to resolve certain scenarios. Alright everyone, so while we're on the topic of security effects, security timing activation, all turns effects that activate when a security card is reduced or so on and so forth, I feel like this was a good time to go over this scenario. Now this is going to be a scenario that more so is reminiscent to the Dandevimon, or I'm sorry, the Alphamon effect. Dan's on the field, so I was thinking about him. The Alphamon effect with the Eismon and basically how that timing goes. So what we have here, just to go ahead and get into the example, is player A's side of the field. Player A has 4 security. This is very important. And then a Salamon, which is BT2 Salamon that says on deletion if you have 3 or fewer cards in your security, recover 1. And then your opponent, or the opponent, player B, is going to have a Dandevimon. The effect that we're worried about here for Dandevimon is going to be the opponent's turn once per turn. When a card is removed from your security stack, trash the top card of your opponent's security. And then in security, we are going to have a Black Gatomon. This is just your standard vanilla security Digimon that doesn't have any effects other than the security effect at the end of battle. Very key word, very important. Play this card without paying its memory cost. So we'll have Black Gatomon as the top card of the security of the Dandevimon. Player A will then have Salamon out on the field, and now player A's turn, they'll swing Salamon at security. So again, just like the security effect with, say, if it was a Gaia Force or a Wyvern's Breath, we'll check the security, and the security effect will activate. Now, some people may think that that means this Black Gatomon plays itself right now. It does not. It states at the end of battle, play this card without paying its memory cost. So Black Gatomon's security effect basically makes a lingering effect that will fully resolve after the battle has concluded. So at the time that Black Gatomon's security effect is activating, Dandevimon's effect is triggering. So since Dandevimon's effect triggered, Before battle happens, we have to resolve the effect of Dandevimon. So now, it's at this point that we resolve the effect of Dandevimon, trashing the top card of their opponent's security. So in this case, player A's security, since their security stack was reduced. Now, no other pending activations have to occur, and now the Salamon will officially do battle with the Black Gatomon. It's in this situation that the Salamon is lower DP than the Black Gatomon. Salamon's under no boosts. Black Gatomon lives technically, or Black Gatomon is bigger than the Salamon, Salamon will die. Since at this point we are at 3 security because of Dandevimon's effect activating, we will then recover 1 via Salamon's on deletion effect. Now that the battle has concluded, because all of the on deletion effects and stuff have resolved first, any on deletion effects have to resolve before the battle is officially concluded in this situation. It's at this point that the Gatomon checked out of security will now play itself onto the field. So this is a very important example to really go over how security effects activate, when other effects, again like in the last one, trigger, and how some effects like this Black Gatomon, where it says at the end of battle. Because if you think about it in a situation where the card was trashed from the top of the security before or after the Salamon had done battle, they wouldn't be able to recover. The opponent would be at 3 security. Afterwards, security check, Salamon's deleted if that's how it occurred. But it occurs in the way that the Salamon will be deleted after the trigger to reduce the security, and then the Salamon will be able to recover. So that's a very important way to process the rule, because in a certain situation, the player could be at a disadvantage instead because they didn't know exactly how their rules processing or how their effect resolution properly worked for certain security effects and effects that are triggered from the removal of security cards. Alright everyone, so on to our next ruling. We're going to have something that really goes over once per turn effect activation and mandatory once per turn effect activation in particular. So, without further ado, our board is as shown. Player A is going to have an Imperial Dragon Mode Secret Rare. This is going to be from BT3 for those of you who aren't familiar with this card. It has the effect of Piercing. We're not worried about its other effect to reduce its Digivolution cost. Piercing, and then your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, unsuspend this Digimon. In its source, we're going to have BT3 Pyldramon. This card more people may know because it saw a little bit of play at the end of last format, of BT6 I should say. He has jamming, and then he has the inheritable. When attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has Imperialdramon in its name, unsuspended. And then our opponent's board is going to have 2 Digimon. In this case, I just decided to go ahead and show up a Bushiagumon and a Patamon. Doesn't matter as long as they are below 12 KDP and 2 security. This is just for legal board purpose instances. So what we're going to go over is, like I said, activating once per turn effects that are mandatory. So in this situation, there's going to be 2 ways we resolve this. I'm going to show you the first situation, and it's going to be different than the other situation on how you resolve these interactions. So you will declare an attack with your Imperialdramon Dragon Mode at the Bushiagumon. When you decide to attack, you will then trigger the when attacking effect of Pyldramon. Pyeldramon's when attacking effect will then unsuspend this Imperialdramon Dragon Mode. This is a mandatory once per turn effect, so you have to activate this effect. So now you can't do it again. That's not too crazy, but it is mandatory, so you have to do this. It's not optional. If you know what Gabumon says or what the BT6 Gabumon says, it says you may, and that's how you resolve that effect in that specific way. But this one is you have to resolve it. So now, no more when attacking effects are occurring. You'll attack into the Bushiagumon. Bushiagumon will be deleted, and this, at this point, will trigger 2 effects. You'll trigger Piercing, as mentioned before. Piercing is a triggered and activated effect, and then you'll also trigger the your turn once per turn effect of Imperialdramon. So in this situation, you get to choose the turn order, so just ease of access to go over the next part, we'll just go ahead and activate Piercing. So now we have permission to check security after all the others effect have resolved. But now we have to activate his once per turn effect, since he deleted a Digimon in battle to unsuspend. So you may be asking, Sushi, we already unsuspended, so we can't activate the effect, so I'll be able to attack again and then be able to use the effect. That is actually incorrect. So in this situation, Imperialdramon Dragon Mode does in fact, it meets the trigger condition to activate this effect. So it triggers the effect to unsuspend, but since he is already unsuspending, at the time of resolution of effect and the time that we can activate it, you activate it without effect. So you resolve it, It is activated, nothing happens because he is already unsuspended. It's at this point that security will be checked, will reveal some other Digimon, and then the battle will be concluded. Security checks are over. Now, if you decide to attack into this Patamon, the Pyodramons, when attacking once per turn effect is used up, so you will not be able to resolve that one. And then you'll delete this Patamon in battle. You still have Piercing. You can trigger Piercing and attack Piercing again, but you have already triggered and activated his your turn once per turn effect. So even though you were unsuspended whenever you resolved the first one, so you didn't get to unsuspend successfully, you did in fact activate the effect successfully. You just activated it without effect. So you'll be able to make the second check, but you will not be able to unsuspend and then swing in again. Very important to know, because if so, you would be able to use this in a different way. If it were a May effect, then you in fact would be able to choose if you want to restand or not, but that's not the case. So here, in a different situation, a more proper way, not really telling you how to play a deck, but the way to resolve this where you would be able to get both effects is you attack security with the Imperiodramon without attacking a Digimon. You will then unsuspend via Pyodramon's effect. That is your only when attacking trigger. You'll check security, you'll hit a Cutemon. Next, you'll attack security, or you'll attack through either one of these Digimon. We're going to go through the Bushiagumon because it's partially cut off by my screen. We'll attack through the Bushiagumon at the end of battle. Since we don't, also to note, we don't get the effect of Pyodramon to activate because we've already restood previously, used up its once per turn. But at the battle with the Bushiagumon, after it's deleted, we'll be able to trigger Piercing and trigger the Your Turn effect. So we'll get permission to check security via activating Piercing. And now, since we didn't use it to check any other security, we just originally attacked security, we didn't go through a Digimon, we're able to resolve successfully the effect of Imperiodramon to unsuspend it since it deleted a Digimon in battle. Now Piercing will happen, we'll hit the last check, it's a Rebellion, and then now, if you so choose, you swing the Imperiodramon again for game. So this is just how to make sure you know on the card text if an effect is mandatory or if an effect is optional. Because in this situation, it really determines on how certain effects are going to resolve. You could just resolve them without effect. That does happen a few different ways, such as saying if a Bokomon with a Memory Tamer is on the field, you resolve Bokomon's once per turn effect. It is mandatory when a Tamer evolves. But since you can't gain the memory because a memory blocker is on your opponent's side of the field, you effectively resolve it without effect. It's not necessarily the same case, it's more so that it's blocked, but you can't just decide, I don't want to activate it for this Evo. I want to activate it for after I deal with the body. Can't really do that. Good to know your mandatory and your optional effects. Alright everyone, had to back the camera up for this one. We have a lot of cards for this example, but this is going to be a really good one if you really want to know some in-depth ways about how effect resolution and attack resolution and stuff works with rules processing and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the example. This is what our board state looks like. This is going to be player A's side of the field. This is going to be player B's side of the field. Player A has BT4 War Greymon, which has the when attacking effect of you may add the top card of your security to unsuspend this Digimon and give one of your opponent's Digimon -6 until the end of your opponent's next turn. They also have BT3 Angelomon. We're not worried about her regular effect. We're only worried about the inherited effect of whenever you're at 3 or less security, you may play a level 3, when attacking, whenever you're at 3 or less security, you may play a level 3 yellow Digimon card from your hand without paying its memory cost. Player A also has Dynasmon. Again, from previous examples, Dynasmon, the only effect that we're worried about here is when a card is removed from your security stack, if you were at 3 or fewer security, recover 1. Then you have some cards that maybe people aren't too familiar with. This is going to be BT6 Mistymon that says your turn once per turn when a card is removed from your security stack, you will give one of your opponent's Digimon -2000 DP until the end of the turn. And then you'll have BT6 Wizardmon, which is your turn once per turn when a card is removed from your security stack, gain 1 memory. Player B, on the other hand, is going to have 3 security. This is just for ease of access. Player A also has 4 security, just in case I forgot to mention that. Player B will have 3 security just to have it on there so I could have like a legal board state. They'll have a Tapermon. This is going to be BT2 Tapermon, purple Tapermon, that says on deletion, recover 1, or draw 1, sorry. They're going to have a Gazimon. This is BT3 Gazimon that says as long as it's on the field, all turns your opponent does not gain memory unless it's via Tamer effects. And then they're also going to have big old BT3 Melomyotismon. So this card had to be errated to what it says, so I know the text is a little small here, but depending on which image I find, I want to make sure I explain the proper effect of Melomyotismon. Melomyotismon is supposed to say all turns, whenever a Digimon is deleted, you will gain a memory for each Digimon deleted. So basically what happened here is the original text made it seem like whenever an instance of Digimon being deleted, you would then gain a memory. So if like 5 Digimon were deleted all at the same time, you'd only gain 1 memory. But what the card effect is supposed to happen is if, say, again, 5 Digimon are deleted, 5 separate Digimon were deleted, so you will gain 5 memory via the effect of Melomyotismon. So now that we've gotten that out the way, let's go ahead and hop into the example. So starting off the example, War Greymon is going to attack the security of player B. This will trigger 2 things. I'm going to try to have it somewhere over here where the pending activations are, so you know exactly which order we're activating in, to kind of have some text along with my example so you can see it go over and you can also read some text at the same time to help explain it if you get lost as I explain. So, like I was saying, you'll have War Greymon's when attacking effect will trigger and Angelomon's when attacking effect will trigger. These trigger simultaneously. Player A will get to activate them in their order of choosing. So in this situation, if you decide to activate Angelomon first, nothing will happen. It'll fail to activate because you're at 3 or more than 3 security. But we're not going to do that, although if you know how effect resolution works and you can kind of see where this is going, you might notice that that doesn't matter in the long run. But we'll get there when we get there. So we're going to activate War Greymon's effect first. So War Greymon will then, using its effect, will add the top card of our security to our hand, effectively removing a card from our security, to unsuspend War Greymon, and then give next 6 to the Tapermon in this example. So now, this will be our hand over here, like I said. Now, from the removal of the security via War Greymon's effect, before the attack actually happens, we have to resolve the rest of these triggered effects. So the next effects that have been triggered from the removal of security are going to be 3 things. We've triggered Dynasmon because Dynasmon is the security is at 3 or less and a card is removed from our security stack. We've triggered Mistymon because a card was removed from our security stack, and we've triggered Wizardmon because a card was removed from our security stack. So now, as turn player, you would get to activate these in the order of your choosing, but you have to remember, again from the previous example, rules processing. So you've had all these triggered effects, but you have a rules processing point after an effect has finished resolving. And at this point, the rules processing notices that this Tapermon is in fact at 0 security. So now through rules processing, we will delete Tapermon. This now causes a 3rd level of triggered pending effects that take priority. We'll have the on deletion effect of Tapermon. Since it has been deleted, we will have that effect, and then we will also have the all turns effect of Melomyotismon because of Tapermon being deleted. So now you have to resolve these in any order. It's up to the order of your choosing. So in this situation, you'll have Tapermon will then draw your card. Say in this situation, we'll draw the card. I don't have a memory marker on the field, but you will then gain memory from the effect of Melomyotismon. Player B will gain memory. So now you've resolved those 2 effects. Again, it doesn't matter which order you resolve them in because it's not going to affect this example. So now our next pending activation is going to be listed right here. The next thing that we have to activate is going to be Dynus, Wizard, and Misty. Those are our next 3 pending activations. As turn player, you get to activate them in any order. So in this situation, we're going to go ahead and activate Mistymon's effect first. If you have already forgotten, it's when a card is removed from your security stack, one of your opponent's Digimon gets a negative 2000 DP until the end of the turn. So we're going to target Gazimon with Mistymon's effect. And now we have to go into another set of rules processing. So in this situation, our next set of rules processing is going to delete the Gazimon because it is at 0 DP. Now we've triggered Melomyotismon a 2nd time. So now Melomyotismon is the most recent pending activation. Melomyotismon will have to activate before anything else. There's nothing. Player A doesn't have any pending activations, so player B just chooses to activate Melomyotismon before anything else. So then they'll gain another memory. So now at this point, we have 2 more effects to activate. We have the effect of Dynasmon to activate, and we have the effect of Wizardmon to activate. Now, let's say something happened and you activated the Wizardmon before that Mistymon and you had all that triggered activations going on, then you wouldn't have been able to gain the memory because the Gazimon was still on the field. But since the Gazimon has been removed because of the way we resolved this, Wizardmon will in fact be able to gain you the memory. So we'll go ahead, gain the memory off of Wizardmon since we get to choose the activation, and then now the only other effect that we have left pending is the effect of Dynasmon to recover 1. So we'll go ahead, take 1 card from the top of our deck, recover it via Dynasmon's effect. That solves everything on the level 2 of things. Now, the only other thing that we have left to resolve is Anguimon's effect. If you remember from the start of this example, I said that it wouldn't matter in the long run if you activated Anguimon first or War Greymon first, because now, since we've activated everything and it's gotten back around to the point that Anguimon can successfully resolve her effect, you have 4 security again. So even though you were at 3 security for a decent amount of time, since you're now back at 4 security when you've reached the point of Anguimon's effect, she again fails to activate because you do not meet her activation condition. Even though you met her trigger condition of when attacking, you still don't meet her activation condition, so now she no longer activates. If she was a once per turn, you'd be able to activate her once per turn again because it failed to activate properly. And it's at this point that War Greymon would check security, revealing a Cherubimon. So now, after this, Cherubimon will do battle with the War Greymon. Cherubimon is in fact bigger than the War Greymon in this example. Cherubimon or War Greymon will go ahead and be deleted. Cherubimon will go ahead and go to the trash. This then triggers one more pending activation. It's again Melemiotismon's effect to gain a memory since a Digimon has been deleted. So now you'll gain another memory via Melemiotismon, and then the attack is officially ended. If the memory is still on player A's side, it will be their turn. If the memory is now on player B's side, since at this point they've gained 3 memory through a whole slew of effects, then it will be player B's turn. So I know this was a very much a long one. It's looking like this is a long 5-minute. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of triggered effects. It's a lot of stuff like that. But I'm hoping to have that text right here to help show you exactly what I mean by pending activations in specific orders and everything like that, so you guys know exactly how an effect like this would resolve. You can see there in that example how, depending on how effects were triggered and how they were resolved, that it could really have affected the board state. You know, maybe Gazimon would have blocked the memory from the Wizardmon. Maybe you wouldn't have recovered properly via the effect of Dynasmon, thinking the effects would activate in a different order, and then you would have been able to play something out via Anguimon's effect, even though by the time it got back around to Anguimon's effect, Dynasmon would have recovered. Maybe you don't have that correct, then you gain a little bit of advantage because then you get to play a Digimon via Anguimon's effect and recover, which shouldn't be that way. It should have been one specific way. Now, this is always something that if you're ever unsure of something like this was a complex one, I understand. This doesn't always happen, but sometimes things like this do happen plenty of times. BT8 is going to have a few crazy interactions where a whole bunch of things can happen on certain turns, especially at X Antibody. We'll get there when we get there. But if you ever have any questions on how certain interactions work before all the effects resolve or after they have resolved and you go over them, never be afraid to call a judge. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you guys to make sure that the game state stays legal and that you guys have a good time at your events. So with all that being said, that is going to be all the scenarios I have for you on this exact board state. Alright everyone, and that is going to be it for the rulings video today. Again, like I mentioned at the start, not a whole lot of stuff. I know that first rulings video was packed with a whole bunch of rulings, but since we've gone through most of the BT7 rulings now, I just wanted to go into some older ones that can really come up and to really show you guys how specific effect resolution and attack resolution is supposed to occur so that we better know how exactly things are going to occur on the board state so that they would maintain a legal board state, and how they can benefit the player and how they can also be not beneficial to the player or may be completely advantageous to one person over another because we don't know how effects activate properly. So again, longer video surprisingly for only a handful of examples, but most of the stuff in this video was very important, so I really did want to go over it. If you guys did enjoy this video, I have a couple of more really complex interactions, some old email rulings, things that we were emailed in, things that have changed after the version 2 rulings of Digimon, that we want to make sure we go over those and how those effects resolve properly. If you want to see stuff like that, just be sure to leave a comment down below, or just give a whole bunch of likes to the video so I know that you guys are super enjoying this kind of video where we go over some complex scenarios instead of specific card rulings in particular. But with all that being said, if you guys did enjoy the content, be sure, as always, to leave a like on that video, subscribe to the channel. We're definitely going to have more ruling videos like this in the future. We're also going to have more deck profiles for BT8 until the set officially drops. Probably not going to have any more BT7 gameplay gameplay videos. I'll have some BT8 gameplay videos when those come out. If I can get some recordings of pre-release, I will always try to get those. Wasn't able to for BT7, but who cares about BT7 anyway? But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. And if you did enjoy, like I said, like, comment, subscribe. I'd love listening to your guys' comments, reading them, and being able to help you guys with any smaller questions. So again, have any of those, leave them down below. But until next time, guys, you guys have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one.